Every NFL season, there's always a handful of teams that end up not being very good. Whether it's because of a poor offense or a poor defense, these teams seem to not be able to put it together during the season. So in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the top 10 worst teams in the 2025 NFL season. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with at number 10, I have the New England Patriots. Now, I want to say this. I like where this Patriots team is heading, and if you tell me by the end of the season they finish the record with a 10-7 or 9-8 record, I really would not be surprised. But when I compare this roster in totality compared to some of the other rosters in the NFL, I just have a hard time putting them above certain teams. For example, the next team that I would have considered for this spot would have probably been either the Chicago Bears or the Las Vegas Raiders. And for the Bears, they have so much talent on the roster, and as long as Caleb Williams looks like what he was drafted to be, that's going to be a really good team. And the Raiders have so many veteran presences in this roster with a head coach that's been there and done that I just had a hard time putting a team like the New England Patriots that are, for the most part, kind of unproven, especially on the offensive end, over a team like the Raiders. So for this Patriots team, I think they could easily outplay this rankings, but in terms of the overall roster, I think there's talent here, especially on the defensive side of things. On the defense, I think they're pretty good on all three levels. I like their linebackers. I like who they picked up in free agency. I think their safeties are okay, and I think their corners are really good. I think safety might be something they look to address in future years. I think they have some pass rushers that can actually go a little bit, but I think in the future, maybe I'd like to find, a consistent 10 sack a season guy if they don't have that guy on the roster right now. I like Keon White. I like K'Lavon Chaisson. I like Braden Swinson, but let's wait and see after the season. I wouldn't mind seeing an upgrade there at some point. But Milton Williams up the middle. They have a couple other guys there too that I'm a big fan of. So in totality, this Patriots defense is really good. Where this team falls a little bit short for me is going to be a little bit on the offensive end. And it isn't that I think this offense is going to be bad necessarily. It's just that I expect some growing pains next year. I'm a big fan of Drake May. He was my QB2 in the 2024 draft class behind Caleb Williams, which I know now hasn't aged particularly well because of how great Jaden Daniels has been. But, I really was a big fan of Drake May as an overall talent. I still am. I thought his rookie season, everything was working against him, yet he still was able to show talent and potential and made some really good plays out there regardless of who was on the field. They made some small improvements on the offensive line, especially on the left side with a new left guard, new left tackle, even a new starting right tackle too. I'm intrigued to see what this offensive line looks like because I think this offensive line kind of could dictate how good I think this offense is. If that offensive line ends up becoming better than advertised, then I think this offense could also be better than advertised. But if the offensive line struggles here and there, which I kind of think they will, then I could see a world where this offense is, not the worst in the league, but definitely not a terribly impactful offense. The one thing that does give them an advantage is Mike Vrabel is a genius head coach, and I think there's enough talent on the offensive end to be competitive, so I could see them outplaying this ranking, but I do think there's at least one more year of building and development before I can call them like a playoff contender or a serious threat in the NFL. Next up at number 9, I have the Indianapolis Colts. Now, as a roster, the Indianapolis Colts are probably the best roster that I'm going to talk about in this video. From head to toe, the Colts actually have a very good team, but they really are lacking in two major spots. That being the head coach, I just have not liked what I've seen from Shane Steichen so far, and at the quarterback position. If this team had like a Geno Smith at quarterback, they would probably be a top 15 team for me because I think this team is very, very talented. Great weapons on the outside. Tyler Warren, receivers are great. Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. There's some pieces on the offensive line that are really, really good. On the defensive end, I think they might benefit from another pass rusher, but if Laiatu Latu takes a big step forward, then that might be addressed. I think their secondary is vastly improved, and I think schematically they should be fine as well. It's just that I have a hard time putting my money on this Colts team when their quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, to me, has never proven to be a starting caliber quarterback in this league. He maybe looked that part in 2022, but even then he only threw 15 touchdowns that season. Outside of that, last year was a bad year. I think he could be in for a big year with the Colts just because of the system and the players around him, but until I see it on the field, I just can't bet on him right now. And then Anthony, as talented of a quarterback as he is and some of the potential you've seen from him, it's just too inconsistent. He's too injury prone, makes too many mistakes. And it kind of puts me in a weird spot here with the Colts where I actually think as a roster, they're very good. But at quarterback and head coach, I just have a lot of questions. And I think quarterback and head coach are probably the two most important things you can have on a team. And this is where I think the Colts are currently the weakest at. So because of that, they are at 9, but I kind of like the Patriots. I could see a world where they end up being a lot better than what I have on this video. Let's go ahead and move on to number 8. And at number 8, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I think after these initial top 3 teams, it does start to get a lot worse. So I just want to emphasize that these top 3 teams aren't necessarily bad teams. It's just that after, this, it kind of does fall off a little bit of a cliff. These are fine teams that could be competitive units. But ultimately, I had to put some teams in the bottom here. And here we go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kind of like the Patriots and the Colts, I don't necessarily think this team is void of talent. You have Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Anton Harrison. I think Trevor Lawrence is a talented quarterback. You got some pieces on the defense that can actually go, both at, in the corners, linebacker, even at defensive line. My issue with this team is it's just missing a few more pieces. I think the offensive line could benefit from a little bit more work. I think the running back room is a little bit questionable. I also have questions at tight end, interior defensive line, at that linebacker, at safety, in that corner. But I will say, I do think this offense led by Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence and BTJ and Travis Hunter are going to be really effective and are going to keep them in games. I just kind of have a feeling this Jaguars defense could end up being the reason why this Jaguars team finishes the season like 7-10 or something along those lines. The big goal for the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, is to make the playoffs or to win the division. But I think the broader goal they need to figure out this season is Trevor Lawrence the actual quarterback of the future? Because you just paid the guy a crap ton of money because you kind of were forced to do so. And he's shown glimpses of great play here and there, but it's never been consistent. And he's had a lot of changes in the coaching staff and personnel around him. So this year, I really want to see Trevor Lawrence take that step in the right direction, look like their franchise quarterback. And I think if you check that off, then in my opinion, mission complete. We at least know we have a good quarterback. Let's now go ahead and try to build around this guy and really put together a good roster that can compete with the Texans. I wouldn't mind seeing the Jacksonville Jaguars get kind of aggressive these next couple years and really trying to amp up the roster as best they can. They should have money. They should have some picks in the future they can trade and move around. So I want to see Jacksonville be a little bit more aggressive. Yes, I know next year they don't have their pick because of the Travis Hunter deal, but I wouldn't mind seeing this team try to trade back into the first round or something to just try to add more pieces to this team, because it's really close to being a good roster. It's just missing a handful of spots here and there that could make it a really good team. Plus, there is the unknown of Liam Cohen. I think he's a great offensive mind, but is he a great head coach? We said the same thing about Shane Steichen, who we just talked about last. And as great of a coach as I think he is on the offensive end, he hasn't quite proven to be a great head coach. So we want to see this with Liam Cohen here. Can he get the job done? I think he can, but let's wait and see. Moving over to number 7, I have the Miami Dolphins. Now, kind of like the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think the Miami Dolphins have talent, but where they are weak at, they are really, really weak at. Now, I will say they are improved from what they were last year. That offensive line last year was straight up awful. This year, it's going to be bad, but they have at least a couple more pieces there. Same thing within the secondary. Secondary a few weeks ago was terrible. They've now added some pieces into the mix. A little bit late. I would have done this a few weeks ago, but now they at least have it. It is a better unit, but it still has a lot of questions. I think the Miami Dolphins genuinely have talent. Just I cannot trust their quarterback to stay healthy. Tua Tagovailoa has missed so much time because of concussions or various little injuries here and there. Tyreek Hill, I think, is dynamic, but he's getting a little bit older. And at this stage of his career, can we trust him to be the former Tyreek Hill? Devon Achane's a good player. Jalen Waddle's a good player. That offensive line still scares me. I just don't really think it's a great unit in totality. Better from last year, maybe, but not by much. I think that offensive line is yet again going to be the reason why they just continue to fall short. On the defensive side of things, I think they have some solid pieces on the defensive line that hopefully can finally stay healthy. Some legit pass rushers. I'm really excited to see what Chop Robinson looks like this year. Linebackers are just okay, and I'm really worried about this secondary. Yes, you had Minkah Fitzpatrick back there, but you got super aggressive late in the offseason by adding multiple corners in for agency. It could end up working out, or it could end up being too little too late. We'll just kind of have to wait and see there. Trading Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, it wasn't the worst trade in the world, especially when you add the context that Ramsey wanted out. But yeah, I just don't think this Dolphins team is all that great. There's also questions at head coach about Mike McDaniel. Is he going to keep his job after not very much doing a great job here so far? So Miami is a team that has talent. They're going to be explosive on offense. I've said this throughout the offseason. I think Miami is going to breeze by some really mediocre teams this season. But when they start to go up against the upper echelon units, or of course, once they get into the cold, I think that's where, yet again, this Miami Dolphins team is going to fall a little bit short. Moving over to number 6, I have the New York Giants. Now, I want to say this. Giants are actually a pretty good roster in general. It's just that their schedule is absolutely brutal. And unfortunately, I think that is probably going to hold them back this season. But when you look at the defensive side of things, if, let's say, Deonte Banks ends up having a really good year this year, it's a pretty damn complete defense. A great defensive line that can stuff the run, that can absolutely get after the quarterback. Some great linebackers that can get downhill, get some tackles for loss, who are also pretty solid in coverage. Add in a Javon Holland, you have Tyler Nubin. Drew Phillips had a good year last year. To me, this defense is kind of ran, though, by what does Deonte Banks look like. If Deonte Banks is really good next year, then I think this defense, for the most part, is pretty damn complete. Sure, maybe you want more depth in certain spots, but I mean, you really can't complain about this defense. If Deonte Banks really does work out, this defense, frankly, has basically no holes. Maybe depth is one of their only holes there. But yeah, I mean, if Deonte Banks works out, then sweet. I think this is going to be potentially a top 10 unit. My issue is going to be on the offensive end. And it's not that I think this offense is going to be particularly bad next year. It's just I have a hard time trusting their quarterbacks right now. Russell Wilson, let's be honest, the past 3 years, or, ever since he's left Seattle, has not looked quite the same. And it could be a potential scheme issue. It could just be Russell Wilson getting older, not being as athletic, not having the arm talent he used to. I think Russell Wilson is a fine quarterback, and you could make the argument he's the best quarterback that New York has had, probably since prime Eli Manning. I think that's a fair conversation to have here. But at the same time, he's not that much better. Like he's about a top 20-ish level quarterback. Can get the job done. That can keep New York competitive. But against a lot of the upper echelon teams they're going to face this year, I think they will struggle offensively. Now, Jackson Dart, I believe, is listed as the backup quarterback. Jameis is the third, I believe. And I like Jackson Dart, and I love what I saw in the preseason, but I don't think they're going to play him too much this year. I think they're going to be pretty safe with his development. Let him sit and learn, and then hopefully by late this year or sometime next year he starts. So I'm not really taking too much of that into account. Receivers, I like Malik Neighbors a lot. Great player. I love Darius Slayton, solid player. Tyrone Tracy, I think, will have a nice big year this year. You also have Cam Scatterbo, too. We'll keep an eye on him. The offensive line kind of scares me, especially if Andrew Thomas deals with even more injuries like he kind of has been, because outside of him, I don't love the interior offensive line. I'm fine with Jermaine Illuminor, but if Andrew Thomas does go down, this offensive line it goes downhill pretty quick. Again, I think the roster in totality is actually pretty good. It just ends up that their schedule is pretty dang brutal. I mean, just look at their schedule. They have Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, LA. You got Philly, Denver, Philly. San Francisco will be good this year. Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit, 3 straight NFC North matchups. New England won't be a pushover. Washington, Minnesota, Las Vegas, then Dallas down the stretch. I mean, this is a pretty brutal stretch this entire season. They have like one game here where I think they will be heavily favored. Outside of that, they're either not going to be favored or it's going to be a really tight game. And yes, they're going to upset some teams and they'll look competitive, but I just can't buy into this team when that's their schedule. Moving over to number 5. I have the Carolina Panthers. Now, like a lot of these other teams, I think they've made some serious improvements on both sides of the football. I think adding Ted McMillan on the offense will really open up this offense to be a lot more explosive downfield. I think Bryce Young could be in for a career year this year. I think he's going to be really good out there. And I think on the offensive line, they're good. They're going to be able to run the football. They have some weapons now on the offensive end, but the defense is still not going to be very good. I think it will be better from last year, which is not saying much, but I think it's probably going to end up being like a bottom, 7 or 8 defense in the NFL. Like, I just don't think it's going to be very good. They're going to give up a lot of points, and I have a feeling that this Panthers offense can keep them in games. But what happens when it's the fourth quarter in a 2-minute drive and you're up by 3 and you have to stop a Baker Mayfield from going down and scoring? I just don't see the Panthers defense hitting those necessary stops. They have pieces, and I think they will be better against the run because of Derek Brown, but they don't have any great pass rushers. I like DJ Wanham, but we'll have to wait and see there. J.C. Horn at corner. You had a Trevon Moehrig back there. I think there's pieces on this defense that you like. It's just far from a complete unit. Now, I will say, if this Panthers defense ends up being more like the middle of the pack, then I think this Panthers team could actually be quite competitive next year, because I think their offense will be fine. I just have a feeling their offense will be about 15 or 16th, or somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, and the defense is going to be somewhere in the bottom 10, and the defense is going to cost them more games than their offense will end up doing so. I think the Panthers will win some games next year. I think they'll upset some teams. I think 7 wins is totally in play this upcoming season. It's just I don't think they're going to win a ton of them, because I think the defense is going to lose them a lot of games. Entering into the top 4, at number 4, I have the New York Jets. Now, ironically enough, I think the Jets are a worse team today than what they were last year, but almost in a necessary way. I loved what they did in the draft. I didn't really care too much for the Justin Fields signing. Honestly, I probably would have just ran with Tyrod Taylor. Like, I probably just would have let him work as quarterback for a season, but I understand giving the young quarterback Justin Fields a chance here. This Jets team has pieces. They have guys here and there that are really good, and I think they've added a bit more depth in certain positions. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Quincy Williams. They have guys here and there, but then around those guys, they're still seriously lacking. I think their edge rushers are pretty good. I think they've made some improvements in the interior with some trades recently. I think Sauce Gardner really holds down the secondary, but I'm worried about the safeties. I still think corner is a bit of a need there too, unless Azariah Thomas really steps up this year. They are completely void of weapons outside of Mason Taylor and Garrett Wilson. I like the young offensive line, and I think the running back room can be very effective next year, but I worry about the passing game, especially with the quarterback like Justin Fields that just really can't throw the football down the field at an effective rate. So because of that, they're going to be relying on their defense a lot and their rushing game. And if the rushing game isn't going and the defense is struggling, the passing game can't get them out of those certain situations. So I think the Jets will be a competitive team that will win a handful of games here and there. For me, though, it just ends up coming down to the fact that I don't think they have the passing game to seriously match basically any roster out there. I will say I like their head coach, though. I'm really excited to see what he does this year. I think be patient with this Jets team. There's talent, there's pieces. I will say I think they need to start amping it up a little bit. They need to be a bit more aggressive, because these guys are starting to enter or exiting their prime, and you don't want to waste the careers of a Quinnen Williams, a Sauce Gardner, a Garrett Wilson. You want to maximize their talents. You got to go for it these upcoming seasons. So I'm really intrigued to see what they do, mainly at quarterback these next couple years, because that's been the Jets' issue for 50 years it feels like. So keep an eye on the Jets. They'll be competitive this year, but they won't win a ton of games. Coming in at number 3, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans. Now, Cam Ward is the quarterback of the future, at least for now. We'll wait and see what he looks like when the season actually gets going. But everything I've seen in preseason, everything I've heard has been very positive. I think he's already a team captain on the roster. There's a lot of confidence, and there's a lot really invested into this young quarterback. And I think for the Tennessee Titans, they're going to make it work. I like Cam Ward. I think he's talented. It's just he's going to need time and development. I mean, this is a roster that, has some pieces here and there. And when you actually kind of look at this team, it's actually kind of an older roster. It reminds me quite a bit of the Commanders last year, where you added in a Jaden Daniels, and then around him was a veteran in Terry McLaurin, some vets on the offensive line, and Austin Eckler in the backfield, Zach Ertz at tight end, a defense that's also pretty old too. Typically, when you get a young quarterback, you're on a very young team. Look at, for example, Caleb Williams and the Bears, Trevor lawrence when he was drafted by the Jaguars, some very young pieces on those teams. This Titans team is actually a kind of a roster that's really ready to go. They're all in their prime. Like a Jeffrey Simmons, a L'Jarius Sneed. Those guys are older. Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley. Those guys are ready to go, but I don't think they're quite yet there. I think they have pieces that could work, and I believe this offense and defense will be functional next year. It just kind of comes down to rookie quarterback making rookie mistakes with a roster that's not quite complete, that needs probably another 2 more years of, baking in the kitchen. So that's kind of why they're at my 3rd spot here. I think they're just going to be a good team that's competitive, but won't win a lot of games because they have this unproven quarterback with various holes on the offense and defense. I think one swing factor that could make this Titans team very good next year is L'Jarius Sneed. If L'Jarius Sneed bounces back and looks like his previous self that we saw in 2023, then I think it'll really help out this defense. But last year he was just not there for the Titans. He was very bad. And I think that's ultimately going to go ahead and cost this team some games if he doesn't end up bouncing back. He's making a lot of money, so let's hope and pray he does. So if L'Jarius Sneed is better, then I think maybe this Titans team moves up a couple spots, especially if Cam Ward ends up looking really good. But because I haven't seen Cam Ward play in a regular season game, because I don't believe that L'Jarius Sneed is going to return to form, they're going to end up being at number 3 for me. Moving over to number 2, I got the Cleveland Browns. Now, Dylan Gabriel, Shador Sanders, Joe Flacco, it really doesn't matter to me who starts at quarterback. I don't think any of those guys are the long-term option. And kind of like the other teams on this list, this team has pieces. Myles Garrett arguably might be the best player in the NFL. And then surrounding him, you got a Denzel Ward, some other young guys like a Carson Schwetzinger and Mason Graham's also there. On the offensive end, you got a veteran offensive line that, fingers crossed, can stay healthy. No promises, though. David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy. There's some good players in this team, but it kind of like the Titans, kind of like the Jets. There's good players here and there, and then around those really good players, a lot of unproven guys or just dudes who, frankly, are not that great. Not to mention, this team has some older players that have been dealing with injuries. Look at the offensive line, for example. That offensive line is going to look entirely different these next couple years. This might be kind of the last year of this main core group of guys. I think in the future, they would probably be wise to start to move around some pieces. Again, kind of like some of these other teams, I think quarterback play will hold them back. I just don't think they're talented enough of a roster. They're also in a brutal division where Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Baltimore all should be really good next year. And that's going to probably lose the Browns maybe 6 or 5 games right there. And they're going to have to make up for it by beating some bad teams. And they probably will win some games. I think they'll be a somewhat competitive team. I think they'll win some games, but unless Kevin Stefanski just kills it next year, and I mean, if this Browns team wins 9 or 10 games next year, just give Kevin Stefanski the Coach of the Year award because he would deserve it. So unless Stefanski does some like voodoo magic, I have a hard time seeing this team be successful next year. I think this year is all about getting the roster better, developing the younger pieces, and then next year going after your franchise quarterback, and then moving on from there, you try to build around him. But for now, the Browns are just a complete disaster yet again. I mean, it's just so funny how this Browns team has not figured out the quarterback position after 20 years of trying guy after guy after guy. Just this might be the year where they sit down, they say, you know what, let's get a veteran in Joe Flacco, let's have some young guys in Shador and Dylan Gabriel to compete for the job, and let's just develop this roster. Let's get better. We'll have to wait and see. I think this Browns team will be pretty bad next year. Not terrible, but not very good either. And in number 1, aka the worst team in the NFL, I have the New Orleans Saints. Now, frankly, the Browns and the Saints are fairly interchangeable because in a lot of ways, the Saints kind of remind me of the Browns in a lot of ways this year. I think the Saints have pieces here and there that are really good. Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think their offensive line's actually pretty solid. There's a lot of youth there. Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson. They have some good linebackers. There's some pieces to work with in this team. But then you got Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shock at quarterback. Also a new head coach that's very unproven. And kind of like the Browns, Titans, and Jets, you got guys, but then around those guys is a lot of question marks or just not great players right now. And so it kind of just creates for a giant recipe for disaster. Fortunately for the Saints, that division is not particularly great, so I could see them winning some games here and there within the division that might put them above a Cleveland or a Tennessee. But it just kind of comes down to, I don't have faith in either one of their quarterbacks. I don't think they're really, either one of them are starting level quarterbacks. Granted, we haven't seen Tyler Shock start, but I wasn't a big fan of him coming out of college, and preseason was not very good. And they benched him for Spencer Rattler, which is a huge red flag for me. So I just can't buy into the Saints defense or offense. I think they will have pieces. I think they will be competitive. I think they can actually run the football quite effectively. And I think offensive line wise, they will be fine. If Kellen Moore does a great job in his rookie season, maybe they win 6 or 7 games. They need to get a first round pick next year that's very high, maybe for their franchise quarterback or for a franchise cornerstone somewhere on this team. They are a good roster with terrible quarterback play and a few missing pieces. So Saints fans, it's going to be a weird year because you have some veterans who are exiting their prime at this stage and are a little bit older that you're going to have to replace. And so the Saints might actually end up being a worse roster next year than what they were this year. They also added like Justin Reed and kept Chase Young, which was really weird because this is a team that is not competing. They're rebuilding. So I don't really know what the Saints team is doing. I don't think they're going to be good next year at all. I think quarterback play will keep them down and ultimately have them being the worst team in the NFL. But you let me know in the comment section below, what do you agree with and what do you disagree with? And if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.